All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak, and the State of the Nation discussion starts right now. We'll talk matters, politics, and everything in between. We'd like to hear your views at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Citizen Daybreak as we speak about matters, politics. We see on the front pages here, we have why Kalonzo is the most sought after politician, and also the Daily Nation, Ruto Gideon in State House talks. But my guest here in studio is Eric Okeyo, governance and security expert. Thank you for making time. Willis Otieno is here, is the deputy party leader, Safena. Thank you very much for making time. In our Kisumu studios is Honorable Eddie Oketch, Senator for Migori, is joining us from there. The Senate is currently in Senate Mashinani. We'll find out what they've discovered while they're there. And Honorable Samson Cherargei will be joining us from Busia. He's a senator for Nandi. As soon as he tunes in, we'll rope him into the discussion. But before we even get into the nitty-gritties of all the details that we're seeing here, Willis, I'll start with you in studio. What is your assessment of the state of politics today? What or who will determine the 2027 political arithmetic?
Thank you very much. What I believe at first instance is that the state of politics and the determinant is going to be the people of Kenya, and more so our young people. Because even if you look at all these arithmetics and gymnastics that you are witnessing, they are more of a response to the challenge that the young people did pose last year, and they reaffirmed it this year during their revolution. And core to their call is the question of the economy. William Ruto has not been rejected just because people don't like his face. He has been rejected by the people just because he has failed them on the economic front, to the extent that for the first time in the history of Kenya, you witnessed people walking towards bullets, not running away from them, and walking towards bullets with a target that Parliament has promised to inflict upon us so much pain. But legacy politicians will want you to still look at them as the main drivers of the conversation. That, okay, I'm a Kigogo here, you're a Kigogo there, let's come, let's talk, let's share the spoils of war, then we get positions, and then we assume that everybody's happy. That type of politics, in my view, was rejected last year. And if there is going to be a political formation that will carry the day, it will be that which is going to answer the economic question. What is your economic promise to the people of Kenya, and how are you going to address it?
Okay. Eric, your assessment of the state of politics today, before we get into the realignment.
Trevor, let me agree with Willis. We are dealing with a dejected and a tired citizenry, convinced that they have a bad government, and just waiting for the right time in 2027. You know, William Ruto, like Willis says, is not hated because of who he is. After all, there was a generational mindset that Kibaki handed over power to Uhuru, and Uhuru to Ruto, younger than the one he took over from. What has been the result? It has been despair. He came on account of housing, health, and agriculture. Three sectors that, if you ask me today, aren't doing well. So I think for me, Kenyans are waiting to prove that they are able to put tribal and ethnicity aside and go for a leader who speaks to their aspirations. We have a dejected society, electorate that is just waiting for the time to vote out this government.
Okay. We'll talk about whether they were really waiting for the time, because there's continuous voter registration and we're not seeing much of it. Let me bring in Eddie Oketch on this. Eddie Oketch, what is your assessment of the state of politics today?
Trevor, we are discussing the politics of today on the backdrop of the election of 2022. And of course, before that, I always want to say good morning to our viewers for, logging in to watch and listen to what contribution you have to make in this debate. We don't take it for granted. But I was saying that the backdrop of this assessment is 2022 election and the journey we have made up to where we are. And my assessment is that we started as a country in a very bad note in the sense that economically things were tough for Kenyans. You remember the 2023 or all the way 2024 maandamano, May demonstrations were about the high cost of living. That was the leading rallying call for why Kenyans were agitating. And then quickly, in last year's demonstrations, it became more about bad governance that was going with corruption and sometimes problem of the government not listening to the Kenyans, to the extent that there were abductions that came, and then we had the Gen Z movement. So the assessment must be based on that, you know. And I think that one thing I agree with Willis on is that the big determinants of the next election would be the people of Kenya, but not just the people of Kenya. It will be the people of Kenya who are registered to vote, because they are the ones who democratically will determine the future of Kenya. But that said, I think that economically, when things were really bad before the Azimio protest, because we cannot ignore that, and then before the Gen Z protests, and then the arrangement that came after, especially with this broad-based government that gave the government of the day a lot of stability, a number of things have changed economically that have made it better to look into the next 2 years going forward. So for instance, it is a matter of fact that 7 million Kenyans have been delisted from CRB. And you know, the people in CRB are mostly the vulnerable population that we have in this country. The second thing is that the pressure of Kenya comes from what we call foreign reserves that, you know, allows for import and export balances. That, since the stability that ODM participated in creating, has risen from 6.5 billion to 11 billion. The third issue, which I think we all know, is that when we started the 2022, our shilling was very weak against the dollar. If you remember, we were at 162 to the dollar. Right now, we have constantly been, since last year, at 129 to 130, depending on where the exchange happens. Inflation rates, if you can remember, Trevor, last year was terrible. It had hit the highest of 9.6 from 2022 because of the protests that we were having. Because of the pact that Azimio has, ODM particularly has had with the current regime, the inflation rate has dropped to 3.5%. And we have got gross domestic product, GDP, which was what we used to measure to the economy. It has just passed 17 trillion as per now. And lastly, it is not me, but World Bank and all the institutions that measure the economy have argued that Kenya is now growing at 3.8%, which is bigger than Africa's global, the rate for Africa, which is 3.3, and even the global rate we are passing. So what am I trying to say with all of this? The economy has extremely improved, but we still have a lot of challenges in terms of that trickling down to the people. And I think that the determinant of the election will be if President Ruto and the government of the day can take advantage of this kind of economic merits to start trickling down, being felt in the pockets of Kenyans. And that is a function of making sure that those projects that make a difference for the people of Kenya, like roads that are being built, like housing that are being built, can be able to actually take root from these economic gains and allow money to enter the pockets of Kenyans. And also, lastly, reducing some of the levies that have been hitting hard into the middle class in the country. Those two will extremely determine how voters then participate in the 2027 elections.
Okay. Willis, will the people judge the current regime based on what Eddie is saying or what you are saying? Because you're talking about the same economy but from very different perspectives.
You know, for Eddie, the economy was very bad before 2024. And that is why Eddie and his team were leading demonstration, the Sufuria movement. And it was purely on the cost of living. It was too high. But Eddie now is in broad-based government. And the economy is doing very well for him. Look at him. Very bright, very shiny. So the economy is doing very well for Eddie. So I don't expect Eddie to speak the reality of that poor Kenyan mother in Kaksingri, in Homa Bay, who is not able to afford basic services, who is today lampooned and burdened with healthcare challenges and cannot access quality healthcare. Ed is saying that, oh, the number of many Kenyans have been delisted from CRB, so the economy is doing well. I was just looking at the statistics on the May 27th this year, Business Daily. The non-performing loans in Kenya are almost 770 billion. So more and more Kenyans, in fact, Central Bank of Kenya's own statements is indicating that it has increased by 17.1% from last year. So why are these loans not performing? Kenyans who have accessed loans, when they go into the market to try to carry out commercial activities, they are not getting any takers. They are not able to service their loans. So you should not measure the success of an economy based on what legacy politicians are seeing as individual benefits in their pockets. The economy should be measured based on the quality of life that the people are living. And where I sit, I see that the Kenyan people are still on the economic front. And that economy is not what legacy politicians are benefiting, but what the Kenyan people are demanding and they desire as a group. And that is going to inform largely their electoral choices. And those choices will be, it is now 60 years, legacy politics, you've had your chance, you've benefited yourselves, you've shared spoils, you've shared positions. Now allow us as a Kenyan people to change the conversation that going forward, our governance should be about improving our own laws.
So Willis, which part of what Eddie is saying is a lie? Did the dollar exchange rate reduce to 129? Is that true or not?
You know, what Eddie is not telling you, by the time when Uhuru was leaving, the dollar was around 117. If you look at those figures. Then, because of the failed economic policies of Kenya Kwanza, the dollar was spiraling. It had even reached 160. Right? It was amok. So if you are telling me that it has stabilized, you should be telling me that it has stabilized back to then 117 where it was, or even to 109.
Now it is at 129.
It is now at 129. Yeah. So what is that? How is that stability? What does it mean to the quality of life to the Kenyan people? The Kenyan people are still not able to access goods and services at a cost that they can afford. But more importantly, what is their earning capacity? What is their participation in the economy? Do they have money in their pockets, money that they can use for purposes of participating fully in an economy? They do not have. Look at the number of graduates or qualified Kenyans. People who have gone to school, people who have acquired skills that are not able to get jobs that are commensurate with their qualifications. Why? Because the economy has shrunk. The private sector is not creating opportunities. When you ask broad-based government, they will tell you, we have Mjengo. And yet, look at the statistics from the building sector. They even told us, from Kipra, they actually told us that the number of construction jobs in Kenya has shrunk. It has reduced. But then, you cannot turn every Kenyan to become a mason or a plumber. There are doctors, there are lawyers, there are teachers, there are artisans, there are mechanics, all manner of Kenyans. And they want to participate in an economy based on their qualification. Not that now I went to school as a doctor, now you are putting up an affordable housing unit, go and become a plumber, go and become a mason, go and... No. For the first time in the history of this nation since I was born, I have seen unemployed doctors. Whereas before, when we were in school, we were told one of the top the top courses you should pursue that guarantees you a job until the day you die. From the day you graduate to the day you die. In fact, you'll be paid before you even graduate. As you're doing your internship. It was medicine. But today, there are so many doctors who are working on the streets. They don't have jobs. And yet, there's a huge demand for medical services by the Kenyan people. Which economy is that?
Okay, why is there always a disparity between the macro statistics and what the people are feeling on the ground? Because government believes that any time when such good statistics are given and then the likes of Willis contradicts them, they believe it's just negativity. But the truth is, can they both operate at the same time? That the macro statistics are good, but then what people are feeling is not good?
Trevor, thank you. I am experiencing Senator Eddie Oketch for the first time on a live talk show. You get an impression of a fairly intelligent young leader. But what Senator Oketch has done is to present an academic PowerPoint of sorts, something that will fit in a boardroom to convince a potential donor to buy into the agenda of Kenya Kwanza. Good that he is in Kisumu. After the show, I want to challenge my younger brother, Senator Eddie Oketch, to take a walk on the streets of Kisumu and get instant feedback whether the citizens of Kisumu are happy. This academic PowerPoint that he is bringing is a fallacy. This talk of the inflation has reduced is only known to them and their partners in the broad-based mongrel. I can tell you that if you picked 100 Kenyans, 90 live below $1 a day. They're actually borrowing for basic livelihood. They are borrowing. Only 10, including Senator Eddie Oketch, those are the ones enjoying. Those are the ones who think this inflation has improved. And that's where we depart from, that let's get to the reality. You know, the other day there was talk of we inherited empty coffers.
Yeah.
Time is coming when we will say, bring statistics. Which coffer was empty, how? Because coffers would not have been empty, but the regime is still saying that it has set aside money for forex reserve. You see, with one mouth they say the left, with the other mouth, shamelessly, they say the opposite. So I think that we need to go down to Mwananchi. And we have a fairly reactive government. All of us can agree. Now, all PSs are in the villages with a 50,000 stipend to young people. An activity that can easily be undertaken by an assistant chief. The assistant chiefs in all our villages have gone to school. In Nyakach, where I come from, the nearly 100 administrative officers are fairly educated. They can mop people around the young people and give them this 50,000 stipend. What is the history of the Asla Fund? Did it work? Did the Asla Fund work? Cabinet Secretary Murkomen has been running all over the country, eating maize cobs on the streets and working with a retinue of uniformed police officers in the name of Jukwaa la Usalama. What's the level of insecurity in the country? Has it reduced or spiraled? It has spiraled because you have a populace that doesn't feel it. When Kenyans can hardly afford to borrow for their basic needs, here is a regime that is chopper hobbing all over in the name of empowerment. Who are they empowering? And you speak to those women, they tell you the money eventually, when it is distributed, each of them gets averagely 200, 300. You know, President, the other day I heard Musalia Mudavadi saying that it is very difficult to beat an African president who is in power. William Ruto's twin brother, Dr. Lazaro Chakwera, who also came into power on account of carrying the Bible. The people of Malawi sent President Chakwera away and returned President Mutharika. What are we looking at? We are looking at citizens across who now are realizing, by the way, we can send away a regime. Okay. When you talk about SHA, for example, let me just allow me a minute to speak about SHA. Yeah. SHA, Senator Eddie Oketch and his ilk of colleagues set aside 53 billion for SHIF, the SHA, the SHIF, for the basic health care, so that my mother in Nyakach can go to pedo dispensary and be treated and go home. That money is in the books. Is it in pedo? It is not there. Because I speak to people in the village every day. Yeah. There is even another one. So that was 53 billion. They should tell us, where is the 53 billion? Where is it in actual sense? Because you say SHA is working. There was a 53 billion for basic health care. Then there is the chronic and critical illnesses cover.
Yeah.
They set aside 83 billion. We have enough oncology patients, people suffering from this cancer, from the other. Are they getting rebates, or is this 83 billion available? It's not there. So one Eddie Oketch, when he now comes, the PowerPoint is very good. The reality is the opposite. And some of them are our friends. So when we meet off camera, they say, you know, we are just trying. We know there is a problem. Okay. That's what they tell us.
Okay, let me hear Eddie's response on this. Eddie, why is there always a disconnect between the macro elements of it all and the reality on the ground?
So Trevor, today I will not respond to any political jab that is personalized. You know, I've been called on this show by Willis, you know, among the people who are feeling well and probably like are the highest earners in the economy, which is political perception that always when you are in a position of leadership like where I am, especially politician in this country, you get extremely sometimes vilified. I mean, I don't think that all the entire political class are in some bed of roses and they are feeling well about their lives or earning more. I can argue, because Willis is my personal friend and is a topmost lawyer in this economy, I can argue that probably Willis has got more resources at his disposal and is earning better than myself by virtue of the work that he does and by virtue of the rate that we know people like Willis get in this economy as lawyers. If you go to any government books, because I deal with pending bills myself, I'm in finance and budget of the Senate. If you go to any of those books, the biggest pending bills in this country is legal services that people like Willis benefit from. And I think that even if you look at my brother Eric, I don't want to go into his bio too much, these are probably are more moneyed Kenyans and more the wealthier Kenyans than even some of the politicians that you might see. As a young politician who has just arrived on this leadership platform, it is wrong to mischaracterize that just because I'm a senator, therefore life is good for me better than Willis. Willis is definitely probably richer than me. But that I want to get into. I want to get into a conversation that is more objective, because when I talk about the statistics that I talk about, it is not me who is creating these statistics. It is the statistics that are created by experts outside government, by the private sector. So for instance, Willis, if I say that the lending rate in our banks commercially that we can be able to open up credit facilities to small and medium enterprises as well as larger and growing business in the economy has dropped from 13% that it was last year during the Gen Z movement to 9.5%. That is not a statistic from Parliament. That's not a statistic from government. It's a statistics that go to any bank, they will tell you this is the prevailing lending rate, and it has increased the lending opportunities for small and medium businesses fivefold since last year. This is not me speaking. These are the banks, and if you don't trust the banks, then go to Central Bank of Kenya. They have got this routine report around this kind of statistics that is not cooked. It is based on what's happening up in the market. But back to your question, Trevor, the reason why sometimes it is very difficult to put money into the pockets of individuals in the country is essentially because of inflation. Inflation can be seen from two ways. One is the prices of goods and services in our economy. Okay? The price of goods and services in our economy, in a sense, determine how people consume whatever they get in our economy. And when those prices are very high, it becomes difficult for people to make sense of the 1 shilling or 2 shillings that they earn. But then on the other side is the issue of what we call propensity to spend, or rather the power that you have with 1 shilling that you have to spend it in a specific place where you come from. Now, if you look at the price of goods and services, Trevor, it's not me saying. It is the senior economic platforms indicating that drastically the goods and services in our country, the prices have gone really down. What I was arguing, though, that on the other side, the power to spend is determined by sometimes levies and taxes that are imposed on citizens that makes it difficult for them to make choices on where do I want to spend 1 shilling when my other 1 shilling has been taken from SHA or has been taken from another levy, maybe roads levy, or maybe higher NSF. And that's why I was arguing that despite the fact that the economic indicators in our country have gone very well and things are going well in the macro level, there is need for the government to start looking at how do we deal with some of these levies that might have been interfered with the propensity of people to spend. Then these things will equalize. But then lastly, Trevor, there are some problems that can be easy to talk about on TV, such as the issue of SHA, because you look at it from what is here but not the genesis that is here. Trevor, I've taken my time to study our healthcare system. The problem of our healthcare is not a problem of just SHA. The problem of our healthcare is a problem of, again, the issue of pricing and an health sector that has become extremely keen on making profit and not providing care, both by the private sector and in government. So let me give you an example, and perhaps Willis and Eric might connect with this. If you were to go and get diagnostics for anything in Migori County or in Kisumu, where I am right now, or even in Muranga, if you were to go to radiology, for instance, a radiologist, or even a simple X-ray exercise, the prices differ across the entire country. Why would an MRI, for instance, cost something like 19,000 in one hospital and cost 60,000 in another, and cost 20,000 in another, and cost 5,000 in another public institution when they are serving the same thing? We have had an healthcare system that is broken based on people who want to make profit, and these things happened hugely during the last 10 years of the Jubilee government, when the healthcare system crashed. For instance, the NHIF that we're talking about, there are less people contributing to NHIF, 5 million people to be specific, and they were the only people who could be able to get service. What SHA is trying to bring is where everybody is registered for this, and you can see the high registration of 23 million, and everybody contributing, therefore everybody getting better care. Claims in NHIF used to be given in a way that would give these profiteering hospitals that mushroomed hugely in the last 10 years of Jubilee than it is now. But right now, SHA is arguing the case for making sure that when claims are made, everybody are able to get genuine claims that are not basically cooked. So what I'm trying to say here, Trevor, is that yes, the country has experienced a lot of challenges in the last 3-4 years, but I think that the gains that we have made, especially after the broad-based government came and stabilized this government, to be able to at least do something for Kenyans before the next election, we should build on those gains to make sure that we maximize on benefits we can be able to get as a country before 2027. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Let me take a quick break here. When we come back, I'll get a reaction from the panelists as well. We're talking about what will this administration be judged on in 2027, and part of it has already been talked about. We'll continue with that conversation right after this break. My guests are still with me. Send in your views at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Citizen Daybreak. When we come back, we're also going to talk about the 2027 political arithmetic. Part of it is on the dailies. You see here saying why Kalonzo is the most sought after politician. Ruto, Gideon in talks in the State House. All that conversation coming up in just a bit. All right, keep your views coming. See you shortly.